The Academy overlooked them, but film history never forgot. These westerns shaped the genre, pushed boundaries, and delivered unforgettable performances, yet walked away empty-handed. Which classics got the snub? And which one deserved gold the most? Let's take a look. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962, the western that dared to tell the truth. History is not written by the fastest gun, but by the best storyteller. Hollywood loved westerns, so why did the Academy ignore one of the most profound, thought-provoking entries in the genre's history? The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance wasn't about gunfights and frontier heroism. It was about power, myth-making, and the cold reality that legends often matter more than the truth. John Ford stripped away the grandeur of his earlier westerns, replacing golden landscapes with stark black and white, sweeping action with quiet, uneasy conversations. John Wayne's character? A relic of violence, who knew his time was running out. James Stewart? An idealist who realized ideals weren't enough. And Lee Marvin's Liberty Valance? The embodiment of unchecked brutality, the lawless West in its purest form. Was that too much honesty for the Academy? Did they prefer the Old West to stay a romanticized fantasy rather than a mirror reflecting uncomfortable truths? Ignored in its time, revered as a masterpiece today. Because in the end, when fact becomes legend, what do we choose to print? The Outlaw Josey Wales, 1976, the western that deserved more. A revenge story, but not the kind Hollywood usually told. The Outlaw Josey Wales took the classic western and turned it inside out. Clint Eastwood's Josey isn't just chasing vengeance, he's searching for a reason to keep going, to find something beyond bloodshed. The film moves through a broken post-Civil War America where survivors, a Cherokee chief, a widowed settler, a lost boy, form an unlikely family. It's a western about outcasts, resilience, and healing, wrapped in gunfights, stunning landscapes, and some of the sharpest dialogue in the genre. And yet, the Academy looked the other way. No Best Director nod for Eastwood, no recognition for the screenplay, not even a nomination for Chief Dan George's unforgettable performance. Maybe it was too revisionist, too raw for the Academy's idea of a proper Western. But today, it stands as one of the finest ever made. Decades later, it's still studied, quoted, and revered. The Outlaw Josey Wales didn't need the Oscars to prove its worth. It carved its own legend. Once Upon a Time in the West, 1968, the western the Oscars overlooked. Sergio Leone crafted a western that felt different from anything that came before it. Slower, more deliberate, and steeped in finality. Once Upon a Time in the West was not about quick-draw gunfights or clear-cut heroes. It was about the inevitable march of progress and the end of an era. Henry Fonda, known for playing noble characters, took on a rare villainous role, delivering one of his most unsettling performances. Ennio Morricone's score gave each character a distinct musical theme, heightening the film's tension and emotion. Leone's use of long, silent standoffs and striking cinematography made the film visually unique. Yet, despite its ambition, the Academy gave it nothing. No nominations, no recognition. Perhaps its slow pacing and unconventional style did not align with what Hollywood expected from a Western. Decades later, Once Upon a Time in the West is now regarded as one of the genre's defining films. While it never won an Oscar, its influence on filmmaking has been far more lasting. Rio Bravo, 1959, the Western that had everything except an Oscar nomination. Howard Hawks' Rio Bravo, carefully crafted character study balancing tension, camaraderie, and action. John Wayne played a small-town sheriff standing his ground against a powerful gang, but the heart of the film was in its ensemble. Dean Martin's portrayal of a deputy battling alcoholism added unexpected depth, Ricky Nelson brought youthful energy, and Walter Brennan's cantankerous charm rounded out the dynamic. Unlike many westerns of its time, Rio Bravo focused on character interactions rather than spectacle. It let moments breathe, allowing the relationships between the leads to develop naturally. Hawks' deliberate pacing and sharp dialogue made it as much about loyalty and resilience as it was about standoffs and shootouts. Yet, Despite its craftsmanship and strong performances, the Academy passed it over. Perhaps its straightforward storytelling and relaxed pacing didn't fit the mold of an important film at the time. Today, Rio Bravo is widely regarded as one of the most rewatchable and influential westerns ever made, proving that awards don't always define a film's legacy. The Searchers, 1956, the western that was too dark for the Oscars. The Searchers was not a traditional western. John Ford's film explored themes of vengeance, obsession, and racial conflict in a way that was unusual for the genre at the time. John Wayne's character, Ethan Edwards, was not a simple hero. He was driven by personal hatred as much as justice. His single-minded pursuit of his kidnapped niece raised difficult moral questions that the film refused to answer neatly. The cinematography was striking, with Ford using Monument Valley's vast landscapes to emphasize Ethan's isolation and inability to change. The film's complex portrayal of frontier violence and its consequences was a departure from the clear-cut heroism often seen in westerns of the era. Despite its ambition, The Searchers was largely overlooked by the Academy. Perhaps its moral ambiguity and bleak tone made it a difficult film to celebrate at the time. In later years, critics and filmmakers revisited it, recognizing its influence on everything from Taxi Driver to Star Wars. Though it received no major Oscars, its reputation has only grown, cementing its place as one of the most significant westerns ever made. McCabe and Mrs. Miller, 1971, the revisionist western, the Oscars overlooked. Robert Altman's McCabe and Mrs. Miller stripped away the mythology of the Old West, portraying it as a place of opportunism, isolation, and slow, creeping failure. Warren Beatty's McCabe is not a fearless gunslinger, he is a businessman in over his head. Julie Christie's Mrs. Miller is not a love interest. She is pragmatic, resourceful, and far more aware of the town's inevitable fate than McCabe himself. The film's atmosphere is unlike any western before it. Cinematographer Vilmos Zsigmond used a technique called flashing to give the film its hazy, muted look, making the world feel cold and indifferent. Leonard Cohen's mournful songs serve as a quiet reminder that this story will not end in triumph. Unlike the heroic narratives of classic westerns, McCabe and Mrs. Miller unfolds with quiet inevitability. Violence comes not in grand shootouts, but in sudden, brutal moments. The Academy ignored it, perhaps because it challenged what a western was supposed to be. But over time, it has been recognized as one of the most innovative films in the genre, one that deconstructed the myth of the West rather than celebrating it. The Wild Bunch, 1969, too violent for the Academy. By the late 1960s, the traditional Western was fading, and The Wild Bunch helped bury it. Sam Peckinpah's film wasn't about heroes or clear-cut morality. It was about survival, brutality, and a world that no longer had room for men like Pike Bishop. The film's graphic violence was shocking for its time. Peckinpah pushed boundaries with slow-motion shootouts, blood-splattered realism, and chaotic gunfights that felt disturbingly real. Critics were divided. Some called it a masterpiece, while others branded it a glorification of violence. The Academy took notice, but not in the way Peckinpah hoped. The Wild Bunch received only 2 Oscar nominations, for Best Original Screenplay and Best Score. No Best Picture, no Best Director, no Best Cinematography. Yet today, its influence is undeniable. Without The Wild Bunch, there's no Unforgiven, no Reservoir Dogs, no modern action cinema as we know it. The film redefined the Western. But was it too much, too soon for the Academy? Did Hollywood reject The Wild Bunch because of its relentless violence, or because it held up an unflinching mirror to America's own history? Red River, 1948, the film that proved John Wayne could really act. Before Red River, John Wayne was seen as just another cowboy star. But here, he wasn't the hero. He was something colder, harsher, almost villainous. As the iron-willed cattle driver Thomas Dunson, Wayne gave a performance unlike anything he had done before. A character who grows more obsessed, more ruthless, as his drive for power overtakes everything. And yet, no Oscar nomination for him. No Best Picture. No Best Director for Howard Hawks. It changed how the genre treated its lead characters. Dunson is morally complex, driven to the edge, forcing his adopted son, Montgomery Clift, into a battle not just of strength, but of ideology. Hawke shot it with sweeping, powerful landscapes. But the real tension is between two men locked in a struggle that feels almost Shakespearean. The Academy had no problem honoring simpler Western heroes. But did Red River's darker, more layered storytelling make it too much for them? And looking back now, did they miss one of the greatest performances of Wayne's career? The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966, the greatest Western that got nothing. A film that shaped cinema. A soundtrack that defined an era. A finale so tense, it still sends chills decades later. And yet, the Academy turned its back. Sergio Leone's jaw-dropping cinematography, Ennio Morricone's iconic score, and Clint Eastwood's legendary performance all helped create one of the most influential films ever made. But when Oscar season arrived, nothing. No Best Director, no Best Score. Not even a nomination for cinematography, despite its breathtaking sun-scorched vistas and unparalleled visual storytelling. Maybe it was too violent. Maybe it was too unconventional. Or maybe the Academy just didn't know what it had in front of them. But while other films from 1966 faded into history, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly only grew in stature. It is now considered one of the greatest films ever made, outshining many of the movies that did win Oscars that year. The Academy may have ignored it, but the world never did. High Noon, 1952, the Best Picture snub that changed Hollywood. A lone marshal, a ticking clock, an entire town too afraid to stand with him, building unbearable tension as Gary Cooper's Will Kane prepared for a showdown he knew he couldn't win. And yet, no Best Picture win, no sweeping Oscar recognition. Instead, the Academy gave the top prize to The Greatest Show on Earth, a decision that still sparks debate today. But High Noon was more than a Western. It was a bold political allegory. A film about standing your ground when everyone else turns their back. Some saw it as a direct response to the McCarthy-era Hollywood blacklists, a stance that made powerful people very uncomfortable. John Wayne called it the most un-American thing I've ever seen, then helped produce Rio Bravo as a rebuttal. So was High Noon snubbed for its political undertones? Or was it simply too different from the traditional Westerns Hollywood loved? And decades later, does its reputation as one of the greatest Westerns of all time prove the Academy made a huge mistake? Some of the greatest Westerns ever made, completely overlooked by the Academy. But does an Oscar really define a film's legacy? These movies still stand the test of time, influencing generations of filmmakers and fans. Which of these deserved Oscar recognition the most? And are there any other Westerns the Academy ignored that should have been on this list? Let's talk in the comments. And if you love discovering hidden gems, overlooked classics, and the stories Hollywood won't tell you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. There's plenty more to come on Vintage Verse.